Fuck around, make my 40 pop. No popcorn, I pop pistols, reaming my body.
Alright guys, this chapter right here is definitely going to be one of the better chapters of the past couple of chapters of the Boruto manga. I've been pretty much saying this for the past couple of chapters. Ever since Masashi Kishimoto, the original writer of the Naruto series, actually took back over the Boruto manga, it seemed a bit slower, but these recent 2 chapters, they have been essentially what we've been accustomed to getting from the Boruto manga. Now, if you guys aren't necessarily completely caught up, of course, this right here is the preview, so I'm just going to lay down the foundation. Essentially right now, Boruto and Kawaki, they're essentially fighting against Code. Now, Kawaki is a little bit shaky right now, mainly because Kawaki himself doesn't really truly want to fight Code, mainly because he understands that it's probably not necessarily going to go the way that him and Boruto want it to go, just because of the sheer fact that Code is just so strong. But the biggest thing that we did leave off on in the last chapter was the fact that Boruto seemed to have actually tapped in to the second stage of the Karma Seal. Now, if you guys do recall, once we've seen this actual form of Boruto right here, it didn't necessarily seem like his original BoruShiki form. First things first, what we do have to point out too is that Boruto doesn't necessarily have the horn. Now, the next thing that we have to point out is also Boruto's left eye is actually open. Prior times when Momoshiki took over Boruto's body, his left eye was closed, and the left side of BoruShiki's body actually did signify Boruto's actual consciousness. And because Boruto has both eyes open and Boruto has no horn, this right here leads a lot of people to actually believe that Boruto is in control of his body right now. Now, the big thing that we do have to look forward to in the next episode is how well this Boruto fights. Now, if it was my personal opinion, I do not think that this Boruto is going to be good enough to actually fully defeat Code. What we did see in the last chapter is that Boruto with the Karma Seal, again, didn't necessarily equate to what Code was without the Karma Seal, but it was a conversation. It wasn't necessarily like Code was just out here destroying Boruto. But once Code did activate his Karma Seal, then he was actually completely destroying Boruto. I said this in my review as well. Once Boruto is actually active with the second stage of the Karma Seal, it might be a certain situation where Boruto is possibly even above Code with his stage 1 of the Karma Seal. But what will Code look like if he does enter that second stage of the Karma Seal as well, and potentially overwhelms this Boruto in his second stage of the Karma Seal? Now, of course, it's going to be an overall conversation in itself. Does Code himself have the second stage of the Karma Seal? One of the things that we did actually see when Code was actually talking to Isshiki otsutsuki was that he had the second stage of the Karma Seal marking on his hand. The Karma Seal on his hand right here, this right here signifies that it is a stage 2 of the Karma Seal. I personally believe that Code does have the stage 2 of the Karma Seal, but it wasn't necessarily completely confirmed as of yet. If Code actually does have the second stage of the Karma Seal, the next best thing that we could possibly hope for is going to be Sasuke or Naruto actually joining the battle. And of course, this right here is going to be essentially the big thing. I personally believe, and a lot of people out there also believe, Naruto and Sasuke alone probably wouldn't necessarily be good enough to actually defeat a character like Code. But the question now becomes, is Naruto and Sasuke plus a second stage of the Karma Seal Boruto plus a Kawaki good enough to actually defeat Code? A lot of people think that that right there is definitely possible, and a lot of people actually do believe that they can possibly overwhelm a character like Code. Now, the big thing about Code is that what we do understand is that he is a lot stronger, supposedly, than Jigen without the limiter. Now, from the actual Boruto writers, like, we understand how anime works. There should be a certain situation or certain scenario where Code actually eventually lifts that limiter. I don't necessarily think that they'd actually bring that up if that right there wasn't actually going to happen. So I personally believe that there's a very good chance that he is actually going to lift the limiter, which possibly leads me to believe that in the next chapter we will not see an actual grand convenience of Naruto and Sasuke plus Kawaki and Boruto fighting against Code and potentially even ending Code right then and there. Now again, this right here is just what I believe. Is it possible that that right there happens where they just beat Code in the next chapter? 100%. Or in the next 2 chapters? 100%. Now, another thing that a lot of people do not necessarily mention is the dynamic between Ida and Code. Now, we understand that they're on the same page as of right now, but over the past couple of chapters we've seen multiple examples about how Ida doesn't necessarily fully trust Code. And even in the last episode, she basically talked about the problem that she had with Code. Of course, him not necessarily listening, him basically wailing out on Kawaki, even though she herself absolutely loves Kawaki. That's besides the point. The big point though is the fact that Ida and Code might split up in the future, and this right here is something that we have to be looking towards every single chapter. Ida's goal isn't necessarily the same thing as Code's goal. Of course, Code wants revenge, and he also wants to actually fulfill Isshiki Otsutsuki's will. Ida just does not like Amato, and she wants to marry either Boruto or Kawaki. Those are her goals, and of course her goals in extension is going to be Damon's goals as well. And from my vantage point, I think that Damon might actually be the strongest out of the trio, which is absolutely insane, but that's completely besides the point. So I personally believe, and I was talking about this on a podcast along with Free Game and some others, there's definitely a possibility that Damon and Ida both leave Code and actually join the Hidden Leaf Village. Because again, other than the fact that they completely hate Amato's guts, and in fact Shikamaru might even agree with them and might actually have them join the Hidden Leaf Village just because of that, I personally believe that right there is the only thing that they have in common. And of course, a character like Damon, who seems like he's going to be easily influenced, I personally believe if Naruto speaks to Damon for just 10 seconds, this man is going to be a full-blown Genin. Period, point blank. And of course, again, Ida not necessarily having a strong dislike of the Hidden Leaf Village, not necessarily a strong dislike of Naruto, Boruto, Sasuke, and anybody else who was actually involved in the actual death of Isshiki Otsutsuki, it would just make sense that she may actually join the Hidden Leaf Village. This right here is just an idea that I have, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for the Ida and Code dynamic and relationship in the upcoming chapters. Now, another thing that we've pretty much been talking about for a very long time, and it hasn't necessarily shown up in the past couple of chapters, is of course going to be the cyborg. There has been a lot of theories about the cyborg, and of course what the cyborg can possibly be, who it's going to actually be, and of course specifically what it can potentially do. As of right now, the storyline doesn't necessarily lend itself to actually showing us the cyborg, but again, it would not surprise me at all if the Boruto writers took about 3 to 4 pages out of the chapter to actually introduce the cyborg and basically say like, hey, this guy right here is now the 3rd strongest behind Naruto and Sasuke in the Hidden Leaf Village. It would not surprise me at all. And of course, the appearance of the cyborgs might actually be absolutely huge. The reason why it would be absolutely huge is because we understand other characters out there, for example, Code, Damon, and Ida are extremely strong, and in getting a character like a cyborg that are on the same level as Naruto and Sasuke would be absolutely huge in regards to the actual security of not only the Hidden Leaf Village, but also the world in general, because of course the threat is going to be them, Code specifically, trying to plant a god tree to actually siphon up all the chakra from the planet and eliminating damn near all of the life forms on the planet. But there's just a bunch of things that I'm definitely going to be waiting for, specifically with this chapter. The chapter spoilers are supposed to be coming out in about 3 to 4 days. I'm going to keep you guys up to date with damn near all the spoilers. Let me know what you guys think about this chapter in the comment section below and give me some of your predictions. But it's been your boy BoruShiki, and we out.
It's a knife.